I am the Maven of the Eventide. Welcome to Vampire Reviews. We're in for a cold one tonight. Tonight, we examine David Slade's 2007 horror film, 30 Days of Night. Based on a popular comic book miniseries by Steve Niles and Ben Templesmith, this movie...
Did someone say comic book?
Hi, Linkara? What do you want?
Oh, you said the magic words.
What? You've never shown up when I said comic book before.
And I thought that since our crossover plans at Con Bravo didn't work out, that we could,
You could, what, barge in on my review? What? No, shoo! Get out of here!
But I just want to help. I can offer valuable comic book expertise.
Scram! Anyway, yes, as most people know, this film was based on a comic book. But what you may not know is that before it was a comic book, it was a failed film pitch. And before it was a failed film pitch, it was a failed comic pitch. Niles had been trying to sell this story for years, and no one wanted to buy it. The only way it ever actually got made was in 2002 when he finally teamed up with Templesmith and IDW asked him to do some comics for free. So Niles suggested the pitch that no one wanted to pay for. It was a surprise success, though according to my geeky comic book friends, that was primarily due to Templesmith's art style working so well with the subject matter. But then, the studios couldn't wait to turn it into a movie. They practically fought over it. The very day the ad for the first issue hit, Niles started getting calls from every studio, every producer, even people he pitched before who denied ever even rejecting it. And I can see why. I think the premise is actually really cool. In the comics version of Barrow, Alaska, which is based on an actual town, for 30 days a year the sun does not rise. And one year, a gang of vampires descends upon the town and wreaks havoc. There's just so much you can do with that idea. 30 days is a gloriously long time to draw out suspense and build up action and work towards a thrilling climax. It's just too bad that this movie didn't do any of that. Nope, not one bit of it. Niles wrote the first draft of the screenplay, but it was rewritten a few times by others, and the resulting movie turned out to be, well, I can't exactly call it a hot mess. Let's just say it leaves me cold. And that's not because it was changed from the comic, though it was a little bit. No, for the most part, it stuck pretty close. But the comic itself was no piece of brilliant writing, let's be real. Like I said, it's all about the art. The visuals in the movie do a good job of capturing the comic book aesthetic and colors, and the design of the vampires is refreshingly grotesque. But the main problem with this movie is just that it's boring. Like, oh my god, are you serious? Are we there yet? Count down the minutes till it's over. Boring. Which is a lot to say for a gore-fest horror movie. But whereas most horror films start out slow and creepy and build to a big gory climax with each character getting killed in a new creative way, the vampires hit the town like a ton of bricks in a Wild West-inspired shootout slaughterathon scene, and then the rest of the movie is spent pretty much watching the uninteresting, underdeveloped characters sit around and wait for the sun to rise. And any action that does happen later throughout the film isn't any different than what we've already seen. You can't have horror without suspense. If we know what's going to happen, we stop caring. You can only show so many snarling hissy fits before the audience quickly becomes desensitized to seeing the vampires rip into humans like they're in a pie eating contest, exactly the same way every time. Seriously, guys? Guys? You're wasting it! There are so few humans to go around. There's like 20 of you and 150 of them, and they have to last you for 30 days. How are any of you getting nourished when all the blood ends up in the snow and not in your mouth? You're supposed to drink the blood. Drink the blood. Not give yourself a facial with it. Drink! Drink! Ugh! You feel it, vampire! And wipe your face. This is Marlowe, the leader of the vampires, played by Danny Huston. We meet him pretty early on, and that's another big problem. This is the kind of reveal that should happen at the climax of a movie, not near the start. Like, you finally get to see the face of the guy who's been stalking in the shadows, barely glimpsing after so long, but it's been so short that we don't care. and then everything he does afterwards just isn't scary. And this dialogue is completely unnecessary. In fact, this whole scene is. It doesn't even look like it's part of the same movie. The colors are all wonky. Did they just want to milk their cool monster makeup design for all they could? Squeeze in a bit more random screaming? I do like that Marlowe's a doofy looking vampire. He's got a serious frumpy accountant gone postal thing going on. I guess that's to make a point about how no matter how lame someone may have been in life, turn him into a vampire and he'll still be a ruthless monster. But we see too much of him and his doofiness. Maybe it could have worked if they'd gone all the way and we really got to know him, some depth of character, some complex motivations, and made a real villain out of him. But no, all he gets are cliche one-liners. Get over yourself. And that weird vampire language they speak, I know the filmmakers thought it would make them scarier than if they were speaking English, but it doesn't work. There's a reason why most horror monsters don't talk, and for those that do, the point of them talking is for the victims to overhear their awful plans and be more afraid. The audience is afraid when the victims are afraid. If there aren't any victims to hear your monster talking, no one's going to be scared no matter how many spooky clicks and screeches you incorporate. Showing us Marlowe killing the stranger isn't scary. It would have been much more frightening if we just saw the evidence of it later, like the characters in the movie do, and had to imagine what horrible thing happened instead. Showing us things the human characters don't get to see does not make us afraid. It does the opposite. Marlowe here is actually a combination of Marlowe and another character from the comic, Vincent, and that's also a problem. In the comic, Marlowe is responsible for attacking the town, which goes against the rules of the Vampire Society. When Vincent finds out about what Marlowe and his buddies are doing in Barrow, he goes out there and puts a stop to it, then burns the town to leave no evidence behind. In the film, Marlowe's the one who does this. But it makes no sense! Surely this can't have worked for him in the past. Fire doesn't destroy all evidence that well, especially not in a frozen wasteland. I don't know, maybe this is the first time he's ever tried this and he's just dumb? Sure, the skulls on pikes and chopped up bodies won't tip them off. But besides that, it goes completely against his established character from the rest of the movie. Because, you see, Marlowe is a philosopher. Yes, he clearly thinks he's the deepest thing since the Marianas Trench. I don't know what they were trying to do with this character trait. Is he supposed to be pretentious and annoying, or did they actually think we'd find him profound? These cliches don't make sense. If you think humanity's a plague and not worth living, then why at the end of the movie do you talk about needing to hide and make sure no one knows you exist? Oh my god, get over yourself. Quoting Revelations, you are not the apocalypse. You are doing your best not to be noticed or cause any wide damage. You're covering your tracks. You're not making any statement or leaving any messages. In the comic, Vincent is supposed to be a foil to Marlowe, and he serves to make the readers think about the nature of survival. With Marlowe going fiend frenzy and hating on humans, but then at the end acting all concerned with covering their tracks, it doesn't make us think of anything. It just leaves it confused. Also, get over yourself! Is it supposed to be funny how full of himself he is? Because it sure isn't threatening or scary, and it definitely doesn't make him cool. It just makes him eye-roll-worthy and unlikable. Which, being a bloodthirsty monster you think he could have handled on his own? Trust me, we already knew all the vampires were jerks. Ugh. Well, at least he has a personality. None of the other vampires do. Well, except for this one, because little kids are creepy.
I'm done playing with this one.
What is this girl, 12? 12-year-olds don't talk like that. Why is she talking like a 3-year-old?
Wanna play with me now?
You can't just toss in the cliche of calling eating something playing and expect the audience to be scared. And all the rest of the vampires? They're about as scary as haunted hayride actors you know aren't allowed to touch you. Movie, did you really think your horror film would work if you replaced shocking story developments and creepy twists with pointy-toothed monsters jumping into the frame and making loud noises? Or just standing around in black coats like they're about to bust out into Thriller? But what's even worse is that the rules of the vampire's powers and weaknesses are never established, and yet the humans somehow know. The first and pretty much only time the word is mentioned, they deny it.
Vampires, you know?
Vampires don't exist, Jake.
But then, later in the movie, without really discussing what the creatures are at all, they've somehow decided to fight them like vampires based on assumption?
These things can't survive the sun.
How do you know that?
Why would they send that stranger to cut us off? If they can't handle the light.
What does that have to do with the stranger? He cut off power, destroyed your transportation, and stole all your cell phones so you couldn't escape or call for help, but there's still light from the generators. They also assume the vampires are immortal.
I can't live forever.
How do you know you will? And they also assume that injecting vampire blood will turn you into a vampire.
We can't fight them the way that we are.
How do you know that will work? Everyone else who got turned was bitten. Why not press the dead vampire's teeth into your arm instead? Wouldn't that make more sense?
He's one of them. How do we know he won't attack us?
How do you know any of this? Did I miss a scene? Are we just supposed to assume because it's vampire default? Was it explained in the comic?
Actually, in the comic...
But I thought I told you to scram.
Have you even read the comic?
I skimmed it.
I see.
Look, I don't need to know the comic to be able to tell that this is a bad movie.
But if you understood the backstory...
I said shoot! Go on, get! Ugh, some people. Speaking of people, let's take a look at our human characters. Our main characters are Eben and Stella Olsen, played by Josh Hartnett and Melissa George. In the comic, they were a happily married husband and wife sheriff duo, but the film changed some things. Firstly, Eben gets a Hollywood upgrade and achieves hot young white man. And secondly, instead of being a happy couple, which isn't sexy, they are now separated, which makes them edgy. Ooh.
Me and Jeannie were kind of hoping that you and Eben might rethink this separation thing.
Now this movie is about a boy and his ex, except not really, because we never find out what their damage is.
Explain to me and Peggy just what the heck is wrong with you and Eben.
Not enough time this century to cover that, Billy.
And therefore not enough time to explain it to the audience. They added this character change to try to make them cooler, but then didn't do anything with it. Their separation is set up in the beginning like it's going to be a major plot point, but then once the vampires happen, it's like it doesn't exist at all, and they work together as a perfect team for the rest of the movie. I kept waiting for it to come up in some way that would affect the plot, like, I don't know, maybe they have a fight at a crucial moment that causes harm to someone, and then they realize the error of their ways and they have to work together as a team for the greater good. But nope, this is the only time it's ever discussed after the action starts.
We were like that once.
Well, why do we care? When are you gonna let us know your backstory? And then it doesn't come up again until the end.
I should never have left you.
We still don't know why you did. Movie tossing in a random character point in a cheap, lazy way without developing it doesn't work. Your audience is smarter than that. We see right through you. See, films have to be about something. They have to have a theme. This movie is about survival, I guess, but in survival movies, you have to give your characters something worth surviving for other than their lives. Otherwise, we might as well be watching Animal Planet. They have to have wants and needs, human wants and needs, and then use their experiences in the horror situation to make the characters grow as a result of their circumstances. And changing the dynamic of a relationship could be a perfectly good motivation and development, but the movie isn't about Eben trying to find something worth fighting for or sacrificing for. He was always on the right side. He always wanted to fight for Stella. Nothing changed there. And it's not about her realizing she was being irrational and should have worked it out with him. It never became about that. She cared about him, sure, but it didn't make her realize her values needed changing. She also always cared about doing the right thing, putting others before herself, and she kept doing it. I guess when you're in law enforcement, learning how to be a more protecting and giving individual isn't an easy story arc to sell. And I could go on about the others, but I would rather discuss the biggest failing of this movie. The pacing. 30 days of night. More like 4 days of night. After the first attacks, the survivors find refuge in a hidden attic and then just sit there, waiting a week for a blizzard to hit so that they'd be able to move to a new spot while it's snowing, which would work better for them because of reasons.
We have two advantages. We know this town, and we know the cold.
The vampires seem fine out there in the cold. I think they can handle it. Then once they get to the new spot, they just sit for another week and then move to another new spot for another week before moving again. Many horror movies span one horrifying night, starting slow, then building action until the climax. If you're going to stretch that night out for 30 days, you have to start even slower. Why does the most action happen on the first night? movie, you should have made it harder for the vampires to pick the humans off at first. Give them some weaknesses. Maybe people start disappearing one by one, and then tension starts to grow in the town, and there's a few red herrings, and accusations get thrown around, and then they think, oh, it's only a couple of monsters, and then we only realize how huge it is in the last few days. You need to give us a sense of the passing time. Flashing 10 days have passed, but then showing everyone in the same positions doing the same thing means nothing to us. If you want to impress upon the audience what this waiting period feels like to the characters, you have to fill up the time. And you know what's a good way to do that? Give us subplots. This would have been the perfect place to add depth to Eben and Stella's relationship, but nope, you wasted it. And I have to ask, where are the vampires hanging out during all this downtime? After the first week or so, they send out one girl they've saved as bait to see if she can lure out any other humans, but it doesn't work. And as far as they know at first, there's none left. Why did they wait so long to do that? What were they doing in the meantime? Hanging out in someone's basement playing Cards Against Humanity? Then once they do realize there are a few people left, they don't try very hard to find them. The humans stay in the store for 11 days. And if the vampires thought they were all gone, why didn't they just burn the town already and move on? Was eating those last couple humans really worth it? And why wait till the last night to set the fire? Shouldn't you have given yourself more of a window to escape? And how do you even know when the sun's going to rise? Do you have a farmer's almanac? At the end of the film, the very day before the sun's finally due to come up, Stella gets separated from the group because she has to rescue a plot device. And so, in order to save her, Eben decides to turn himself into a vampire so he'll be strong enough to fight Marlowe. After a couple straight minutes of getting his ass kicked, he suddenly has the power to punch straight through Marlowe's skull. And apparently the other vampires decide it's not worth it to gang up on him, and they just leave.
Should I go after them?
Yes! Yes, you should! Why not? They're just going to get the next town, and you know you have at least 9 days before you become fully like them. You could have done something, but no? You're just going to kill yourself? Waste the powers you gave yourself for the sake of, oh, whatever. Now what? Is Stella going to go after them? Call the FBI? Warn the world? No? Nothing? That's it? That's the end? We really have to go and watch the direct-to-video sequel to get any kind of resolution? Oh, I guess I should say something positive about this film. There has to have been more things I liked about it. I like Chekhov's Muffin Monster.
Muffin Monster?
Muffin Monster. And I thought the extensive use of day for night was pretty good. I could barely tell for the most part. I thought Billy killing his family to keep them from getting bitten was genuinely twisted. It really worked that they didn't show the bodies. And his death was one of the only ones that actually affected my emotions, unlike practically everything else in this film. There were just so many things that didn't work and didn't make sense, even if they might have in the comic. Just things, so many things.
You know, if you had just let me help, I could have explained half of those things.
I didn't need your help to review this film. Who cares if I don't have any comic book expertise? I have vampire expertise. I can review anything with vampires in it in any way, no matter what it's based on.
Oh, really? Anything?
Yes, anything.
What about Twilight?
You dare even mention its name?
Oh, please, we can all see your copy on the shelf right next to you.
That's for research purposes.
Besides, you said anything.
Well, of course I could review that. But why would I want to? Everyone's reviewed it 1,000,000 times already. What would be the point of me just repeating all the countless ways it sucks and not in a good way? Edward's a creepy stalker, Bella's a blank slate, religious ideology shoehorning, blah blah blah.
But could you review it in a positive way? I can review anything with vampires in any way. Oh, so you couldn't?
No, I could. I just,
Oh, so you will? And you won't need anybody else's help, because you have all the expertise.
Well,
Well, I guess I can help you out a little bit. I'll add you to the release schedule. How does next Tuesday sound?
But wait.
Oh, all right, the Tuesday after then. There you go, all scheduled. I can't wait. Bye now!
I am the Maven of the Eventide, and I don't feel so good.
It's a damn cold night. It's
I thought you and I, we could do the thing when the cross.
Good evening. Again, hi. You may not realize this, but the video you just watched is old. I originally released it in October of 2012. Yeah, that old, hence the references to my later Twilight video by our good friend Linkara. I used to host my videos on Blip, but when Blip was scorched from the earth, I re-uploaded them all here on YouTube, but several of them got flagged, including this one, and needed to be re-edited, which I did, so now it's back. Yay! I'll be doing the same with the rest of my missing backlog when I can. Back in the Blip days, I was doing pretty well. 74,000 people watched this video there. And I hope to do well again here on YouTube, but let's face it, YouTube is no Blip, so I have started a Patreon. For all of my new videos, I'll be releasing them exclusive first for patrons, so if you're eager to see more vampire shenanigans, come support me on Patreon. There are other rewards too. The link is in the description. My first video is going to be on Lost Boys. It's actually almost done, so join my Patreon quick if you want to be on board when it drops. After that, Nella joins me again to review some vampire beverages. And then my list includes a Carmilla web series, Helsing, top 10 worst Draculas, vampire parody films, a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm always open to suggestions. I could not do this without you, so thank you so much for watching my silly little vampire show, and I will see you again very soon. Blah.